call a meeting. 6 o'clock, I'd like to call a meeting of the select board, October 17th, 2023. First things, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
So I think we're gonna delete the self-Woodstock design update, and I'll cover that in my manager's report. If that's okay.
That's fine.
That's fine. Okay. Citizens' comments.
Kareem.
Krim online has a citizen comment.
Should I go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead, Kareem.
Yeah. Hi, good evening, everyone. Hope everybody's doing okay. I do have a quick question. Perhaps we can get an update, and you're probably familiar with what I'm going to be asking since I sent an email about that. Would it be possible to get an update on the situation of the hose that's providing water across the Elm Street Bridge? It is my understanding from what I've heard, but that information might be wrong, that apparently there is one action plan that is fairly complex, and then there's a contingency plan that, you know, perhaps could kick in if the desirable plan does not happen. My question is if you could tell us very briefly what those two plans are and whether there's urgency to get it done before the winter. And finally, if it doesn't get done on time, if there is urgency, what might be the implication to the rest of the water users that are connected to the water system? Thank you.
So I'll cover that in my manager's update as well.
Okay, great.
Talk about that, so thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any other citizen? Jill Davies?
I'm sorry I didn't respond to earlier. The item number 10 on the investment committee can be deleted.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, you're up, Eric.
So a few things. First, I signed in an agreement with the elementary school for town hall to be a shelter in place in case of emergency. They'll be doing I don't say a practice run, but soon at town hall to see how that would work out. But it's not an option in case the worst case scenario happens. We'll be here for them. Second, two things. One, I want to welcome Laura Powell to the select board, our newest member, appointed last week, I believe. So welcome. Thank you for volunteering to be part of our group. But obviously Laura's here because Millie Riley is no longer on the select board. As everyone knows, she stepped down recently. So I just want to again publicly thank her for her service, you know, all she did at Woodstock, and I look forward to seeing her around soon. Next, the water working group for the aqueduct is starting tomorrow is the first meeting to try to get a hold on what's happened with the aqueduct and what the questions need to get asked to look into what their future is. So they're going to start meeting tomorrow. I've been in touch numerous times with the Harvard Business group that's working with us as well on that subject. So hopefully in a few weeks we'll have a lot more answers about what the future holds for that company. And on the question from the audience, I hesitate to speak too much about a private company and what their goals are, as I have no direct oversight over them, as the select board does not. But it's my understanding that they're looking at a few different options depending on funding and time. One of them might be able to connect a 4-inch pipe underground. Currently the pipe on Elm Street is 4 inches as well. So that would continue the same amount of water service we currently have. The village obviously survived foliage season with that pipe. So that could get us through the winter. Then the spring, they look at the option of Elm Street and the bridge. I think their goal is to have a pipe go under the bridge on Elm Street. The cost is quite extensive and something they don't believe they can handle currently with the funds they have available to them. We're working with them on finding additional funding, potentially from the state, federal government, et cetera, to make that happen. But that's probably not going to happen until at least the springtime. So the goal is to look at having this short-term solution for the winter and going from there. And they're as worried as we all are about getting this fixed as soon as possible. Are there any questions on that?
Kareem has his hand up.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Appreciate you following up with them. I appreciate your comment about it being a private company. The flip side of that is that should they not be able to get the interim work done prior to the winter, I do believe that the select board has a responsibility to understand what might be the impact to the village, given that the village is part of the town. And I guess what I'm concerned about is that we don't have a repeat of what happened when we had the issues with the water lines, which is pretty much a lot of businesses and homes and residences being actually impacted, leading to the closure of many businesses. That would be disastrous again for the town. So I was wondering how confident, based on your conversation, you feel about them being able to put the interim solution in place. And if they don't put it in place, do we have an understanding of what the risks are?
Yeah, I think you touched on the risks pretty accurately and, you know, the consequences of those risks. So I think we're all aware of that. And I will say it's something that I'm working on daily, you know, with the aqueduct and with other people in the community that are working on this as well. So we are trying to get this done as soon as possible. Again, I hesitate to speak for them because they have to, you know, speak for themselves. But they're trying as hard as they can to get this done. They're meeting with contractors, they're looking at funding, and from my conversations with them, this is happening as fast as possible.
Okay, I'm just wondering if the select board has a level of comfort with the aqueduct company that they'll be able to get this done, or should we start getting worried, I guess, as a village?
I mean, I wouldn't want the select board to comment on what the speed of the aqueduct to or what they can accomplish. But like I said, I am in touch with them daily, trying to get this done as soon as possible, and we're hoping to have a solution done very soon.
Okay, thanks. I would assume that there might be a way for them, just like they did an excellent job in communicating with the population during the latest crisis. If at all possible, at your next meeting, if you wouldn't mind, Eric, requesting from them to send those emails updating us on the situation and the progress that they're making, that would be fantastic. Yeah,
it's my belief that once they know exactly what they're going to do, they'll be communicating that. I think right now they don't want to have people start speculating when they don't know exactly when they'll start working and how long the work will take. But once they know for sure, I'll make sure they get it out there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Come on up, Peggy. Just state your name for the record and.
Okay, Peggy Fraser, Woodstock Village. Given this and that it's a private company, therefore not eligible for a lot of kind of FEMA money and things like that, are you in contact with the state of Vermont in the case of an extreme emergency to happen again?
Yeah, so myself, the aqueduct, our local representatives have been in touch with the state nonstop since the original flood about this situation. They're all well aware of where we're at, and they're working with us on funding and other solutions as well.
The state is working with
I had
Woodstock, not the private company, but to assure us that we won't have another horrible emergency.
So we're not working with the state on that currently. We don't have, there is right now no alternative to if there's an issue with the water company right now. We don't have a backup plan currently. The goal is to get the piping under the ground as soon as possible, and that will solve the problem.
Okay, I'm still a little confused because are you saying that in the case of an emergency, the state of Vermont is not prepared to come in because the select board or our governance here is in contact, and so in the case of an emergency, the state can help us?
So during
forget the private company. I mean, what's the responsibility of the officials of Woodstock?
In what sense?
It's water.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not an amenity. It's basic to our lives. So what if the water company fails? Is the select board or whoever or people we elect, are you prepared to get the state involved or something that would help us so that we have water?
Yeah, in case of emergency, we're gonna tap every resource we have to make sure that the residents are not impacted at all. So in case of emergency, we would be talking to the governor to come and help us.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, can I ask,
Yeah.
how many people are on the working group and how often they're planning to meet?
So tomorrow is their first meeting. Roughly off the top of my head, there are at least 5 members. And I think the discussion tomorrow will probably lead to how many meetings they're gonna have after that. I think originally they talked about meeting weekly, but it's probably gonna depend on people's schedules. If there's no more comments on my general report, the financial report, I think we got some questions on the taxes and how big it looked. And basically, it's the way Woodstock does their accounting, it's accrual accounting. So once we send out the bills, that total what the bills are shows up as total revenue. And included in that is also the taxes that go towards the school. We write a check from our account to the states. So that's why you see such a large number in there. Unfortunately, that's not our tax revenue. So there's that. And then I think Susan also asked about the interest being lower than normal. And what that is we have to do our journal entry in our accounting software to allocate what interest came into the bank. With Robert just starting 2 weeks ago, he's not been able to catch up from over the summer. So he's seeing that interest account is just the month of July's interest. So it's missing August and September as well. Are there any other questions? Okay.
The liquor license application.
Yeah, so ongoing liquor license issue that is Susan's and mine favorite issue to have. It all flows through the states. What we traditionally had was just a printout that showed us nothing to say paper. We're not including that anymore. This is, I believe, Max, which has been bought out by another company. So just applying for that liquor license. I think in the past, the motion from the board has been to approve it pending the state is doing all the final information on their end.
I would make a motion that we approve the Woodstock Village Market liquor license on the assumption that the state's looking at the application since we cannot.
Make a second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And there's no old business.
Alita, we could put you at the end if you'd like. We could put you at the end if you'd like.
Welcome, Laura. You probably don't have this, but this is, oh, you do, well, someone's done their good homework. So the purpose of our meeting tonight is basically to remind everybody that in 2022, we received a limited preservation plan for the town hall building, prepared by the architectural firm of Mills Shoring, who are here. And I will just say that I went to a conference, the National League of Historic Theaters, and everybody I met in the 300 people that were there were like, oh my God, you're working with them, they're amazing. So the Town Hall Project Committee, which I chair, I'm not talking about Pentago, I'm chairing that committee. We reviewed the prioritization summary recommended that was submitted in March 2023. Our committee unanimously recommended that the select board commit to completing the work laid out in urgent work priority 1. And I think, Meredith, do you want to walk through that priority 1?
Actually, Jen is going to do that for you. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you again. I'm here tonight to answer any questions as well as Michael Schnoring. We're both partners in the firm of Mills and Schnoring Architects. Jen Arnaldi, who is a senior associate with the firm, and the project architect has the screen, I believe, or can share her screen.
You all have priority one?
Yeah, should be in the booklet.
Thank you, Alita. As Meredith said, or as Alita said, we were hired by Pentangle to produce the limited preservation plan, which consisted of condition assessment of the building, also the structural condition and a review of the previous findings on the structure of the building, a code study, recommendations, as you see here, for prioritized repairs, and then cost estimate, which used allowances for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing work. So the goal is to plan, obviously, for the future of the building and address the code deficiencies. So as we created this phasing document with those things in mind, we identified the structural stabilization at the rear stage house as the top priority. And so just to sort of walk you through the priority, it involves underpinning the stage house to, again, stabilize it for all future uses. This stabilization involves a few different steps. It's the underpinning, it's beam seats to support the loft beams above to reinforce the connections, and the diaphragm with the roof of the building. And as you can see, the subtotal there is 1.6 million. The other things we put in priority one included work at the front porch and portico, which are primarily wood repairs to the woodwork, and also the patio structure, the concrete substrate, the landing, the granite at the landing, the brick paving, essentially to make the entrance safe and present a new front to the building. We included the new historically appropriate light fixture at that area. So essentially envelope repair work. And then the other three items we included in the priority one are the items that would be required to make the stabilization happen at the rear. So those are the mechanical, plumbing, and electrical items that do occur in the sub-basement and the units, the air handling units that are at the rear of the building. So those would need to be either relocated or replaced, as some of those units are quite old. And so these dollar items given here are for that work, that particular work that we see. So, I mean, essentially the committee is asking the select board to commit to completing work laid out as priority one that we've shown here. And then continue to consider future work in the other priorities. We're not going to go over the other priorities today, but for budgeting planning purposes. So I think we would take questions on priority one work recommendations that we've laid out from the board.
If I could ask the question first.
Sure.
So for priority one, we're talking about $3.2 million.
Yep.
Is there a way to do this like piecemeal, or does it have to be the 3.2 all at once?
I think what's important to do is the stabilization work. So it could be potentially phased, these items, but with a large chunk of this money, the stabilization certainly, and the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing being all part of that first phase, because they just need to happen together to make the stabilization work.
So you'd have to be 1.6 million from the jump from the beginning.
Yeah, and this is an estimate, and we would develop the cost estimate with more detail as we go into a construction document phase. I mean, this was a schematic level study. So as we would move into construction documents for that structural work, we would get a little closer dollar figure. Apologize about my puppy here.
I would also just add, for funding resources, we're not putting this before the select board right now, but putting an easement on the building does release some funds from the Preservation Trust of Vermont. And there are contingencies, which is you put up $6,000 and then the town agrees to work with Preservation Trust of Vermont to be stewards of the building. In addition, I think I have met with the gentleman from Torque, and we are looking at that grant, doing an assessment for the HVAC system. So I think there are funding opportunities. So I don't think that our committee is saying to the town, you all have to fund this. I think in spirit, you have to say this is an important thing to do, and we can work together to figure out how we are going to fund it. If we don't fund it, and that's fine, but you are basically saying, okay, the town, this building will continue to deteriorate. And that's the reality. So I think the purposes of us being here is saying from our committee is this is like the minimum to keep this building alive. And if we don't shore up the end of the building, the 1929 addition, we can't make any changes. Doesn't mean it's going to fall into the river. It just means that if we want to make the building accessible, ADA accessible from the rear end, we can't do it without an elevator.
And it's one more question for the engineers, from me at least. The 3.2, what does that do to the life of the building? So if the town agreed to allocate $3.2 million for this, and that first work was done, what does that add to the life of the building? How long should that, increase our overall time in here?
I mean, I think that stabilizes the rear of your building. I know it's hard to put a number of years on the building, but it's certainly many more years for that rear of the building. So it does increase the longevity of your building significantly.
And I think that leads into my question is, other than the 380,000 for the front porch and portico, all of the 3.2 is for what's considered to be the backstage. Is that right? Or maybe some of the theater? So it really isn't, it's not any other aspect of town hall other than the theater section. Is that correct?
As well as systems for the building, because
So
it doesn't.
HVAC would be for the entire building or just for the theater?
Those units do feed a good portion of the theater, so it does include HVAC improvements for the rest of the building. It doesn't include the improvements for the front of house, the lobby, I should say, that those HVAC units are located elsewhere, but it does include HVAC for a lot of the building.
So for like the offices up here? On the second floor of the building, the town function, the municipal portion of the building?
The question is, are those served in, I mean, I think, again, the system hasn't been designed yet, so I think we would have to go to the construction document level to really design the system. The idea was to consolidate some of the systems that are currently in the building. So that part of that work would cover this new consolidation of heating and air conditioning.
And to answer your question, Susan, I did do a walkthrough with the energy guys who are looking at consolidating the HVAC. Upstairs, we have that really old cooling unit up here, which just cools here. In the manager's office, it's heat pumps. And so this does not include that, but there is definitely a vision of trying to make the building more integrated in its heating and cooling system. Of course, the theater is the biggest space. So if we are able to get a grant that we can get rid of our big cooling unit and have an integrated system, that would be great. Now, your point on shoring up the back. Do we want to shore up the back? The reason to do that is if we want accessibility. And if y'all decided, "No, we don't really want ADA accessibility from the back of the house up," it's not just a theater. It is how people come in and come up. That is a real good question for you to decide. Because that little elevator requires, or any future changes to the back of the building requires those underpinnings. So you could say, you know what, let's not do it. Then, okay, then there's no future changes to the back of the building. Does that make sense?
Um,
So,
So how often do you have used the stage for plays or musicals or whatever? Just curious, average.
good God, 90% of our programming is during the school year. So we had a show 2 weeks ago, 400 students came in from 8 different schools. Zach's Place comes in. It's not that it's not used. It's not that it's not used. Is it used for big performances like we tried or did? But no, it's more community space. And we'd like it to continue to be a community space, but that is a choice.
Can I add in just a small comment? I think, when we were first hired to do this project, it was really to look at the overall health of the building and what it would take to be good stewards of the building, which is obviously a significant community asset, not only as town hall, but also for theater use, but for both. But our evaluation was really looking at the building as a historic resource without thinking specifically about theater use versus town use. It was really all about the overall health of the building and how it needs to meet code going forward, but also have better accessibility, et cetera, take care of things that some deferred maintenance. The building hasn't had a comprehensive renovation since the 1980s. So really this division into priorities is to take a look at the overall health of the building and really to evaluate what the most significant aspects are that need to be addressed in sort of a priority fashion. So really without regard to usage of the building, but more overall as an important, significant community resource. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. That's very helpful because I think you could take the theater out of it, take Pentangle out of it. It's a space. It's a space. We want to have this largest public space in Woodstock continue for years to come. And it could not be the stage. It could be whatever, select board wants to do with the space. But I think Meredith's point is, if we don't take care of the building now, we won't have a building regardless. And so it's not about a stage or a stage house. It's about the box, the big box. How are we going to take care of it? Or decide that priority wise, maybe we don't take care of it.
I know it's not a popular question, but what would a comparable cost of that addition were taken off of the building?
It's $1 million to take it off. At least.
So can I ask?
And back when there was a previous committee, there was an issue with needing an easement from the neighbor. Is that still an issue?
The only reason that we were talking to the neighbor was there was a suggestion of creating a wing space, which would have gone into the driveway. And the new neighbors are lovely, but that is not feasible. And I think the one thing we've learned from both teams is it's a very narrow space. It's a box. We can't go left, we can't go right. They're just, we've got what we've got.
So a few questions online, but I just have one more question for the engineers. Based on your study, if the town voted to do nothing to town hall, what's the condition of town hall like in 5 years in your expert opinions?
I mean, a building needs regular maintenance and upkeep, so the condition of town hall from an envelope perspective continues to deteriorate. I mean, you already have leaky windows and, problems coming off the roof eaves of water, which is penetrating the walls. There's some damage from probably internal leaders that's causing leaking on the interior of the walls. And there's the stage house, should be stabilized to keep the entire structure from moving. I mean, it's not showing any signs of moving at the moment, but it's just a reasonable idea to keep the building structurally sound. So that's why our recommendation is to do the repairs and prioritize them with exterior envelope items, and then serve the interiors as you deem appropriate.
Right, I would say nothing that is included in priority one is any kind of cosmetic work, so to speak. It's really all sort of things that are unglamorous and that people don't see, but really contribute to the overall health of the building. Some of the more the prettier things that deal with the interior come later in the priority list, but these initial recommendations help to secure the envelope of the building and to halt some of the deterioration that's been taking place over time. So,
Mark,
Meredith, if I may, just to enhance that a little bit, the front porch, there are some liability issues for the town, and this isn't to scare anyone, but we certainly noticed that the displacement of the patio, the deck, where people walk, it could become, and in some places it is, a tripping hazard. So there are some real issues there that should be addressed. The other potential issue is that when the stage is used, as the theater is used, there are ADA issues that have not been addressed. The fact that the stage itself is not accessible and the dressing rooms are not technically accessible, and there's no direct route, accessible route from the dressing rooms to the stage, doesn't currently comply with the ADA. The auditorium itself doesn't comply with the ADA because of the seating and the way it's arranged. You technically can get into the building through the elevator on the right side, but there's not a lot of access beyond that. And I'm only speaking of the public use on the first floor. Obviously, the offices above are accessed from the elevator, so that works fairly well. So there are a couple of issues that we're not lawyers, so we don't try to grapple with that issue, but we do know the ADA issues and the sort of safety issues of things like the portico that should be at least looked at critically from the town's perspective. And if you decide not to do it, then you need to understand what that means.
Your question?
Alita, I apologize since I'm new. I was wondering if you have an idea of how much the preservation funds and other grants you've been looking into, how much that would alleviate in terms of the cost, if you have a sense.
I know that there are a bunch of federal grants, but the Preservation Trust of Vermont does have a good chunk of money, but it requires the town, and it's the town, to put an easement on the building. And the easement is basically a 35-year agreement. And the easement committee I've met with, which is basically, can you be good stewards? It ensures stewardship. So if we decide, or the town decides to work with them, then 10 years from now, someone wanted to take the pillars off or historical features, and the 1929 addition included going to the pillars. It used to be a flush front. Then we would have to fight with them to say, we really want to take those pillars off. Having said that, ADA access generally trumps historical features. The back of the building, the 1929 addition, is a box.
Mhm.
There are no real historical features there. I would just say that the select board should contact the Preservation Trust of Vermont, look into easements, because it does open not only grants from them, but also federal grants. It ensures stewardship of the building.
But you don't have a sense of like how much in relation to the cost that we're talking about today?
Phil?
Typically, the federal grant.
Phil, would you mind coming up if you speak, just so people online can hear? Thank you.
Philip Newberg, I'm on the Town Hall Building Committee. Typically, the federal grants are 50% of the cost, but the cost could be, the town's portion could be in-kind services. So it doesn't have to be all cash contributions on the part of the recipient.
But just so you know, Laura, Phil works for the feds. He's like the highest end of the historical preservation.
I work in this area, so I'm aware of funding sources, and typically it's about 50%. But a lot of communities throughout Vermont have really leveraged these quite well. Towns even smaller than Woodstock. So Paulette is one that comes to mind. There's a lot of great success stories. And I know one of our committee members, who I think is online tonight, he had actually met with the state officials who handle a lot of the village development grants and the historic preservation grants. So there's a whole slew of them that we can drill down to on the next level once we have the sort of endorsement in terms, as Alita said, of, yeah, this is a good approach to go forward with, without committing to actual dollars at this point.
Would you be able to, I'm sorry, would you be able to send us some of those towns that have used?
Yeah.
Yep,
Thank you.
you can go on the Preservation Trust of Vermont website. There are, I believe, in the state of Vermont, at least 400 buildings that are under easement. And some had to do ADA access for elevators, which took out some of the historical features because the access was so important.
I had two questions. The grants that you're talking about, how many of them are sensitive to the grand list values of the town? I find Woodstock is often not in the running for grants because we're considered to be a wealthy town.
I don't think that plays into this. It might for other reasons, but not in preservation.
And then I was also wondering if we know how much is left from the previous fundraising campaign. How much money?
So we have, the town is holding restricted funds, and actually I meant to, we have a new person who replaced Zoe, so I didn't get to him. We have for Pentangle 150,000. All of that money, and I believe it may be another 300,000, but those funds, obviously, as you know, I have to go back and say, if the town were like, oh, we would like to do X, Y, and Z, I would go to each individual donor and say, are you comfortable with that money going toward whatever? So there is money. I mean, it's not a lot of money. It's not the $1 million we need, but there are funds that people committed. The big money that we brought in, I wouldn't say I brought in, I would say Wendy did a great job. Wendy Spector did a great job. Most of those big donors have since pulled their money back. So we don't have that huge pot, but we have a good amount of money that I could go back to donors and say, if the select board said, hey, if we could just do, all right, deal with the fact that we don't have a ramp anymore. So a loaded ramp, if you go into the theater to the outside, the only way people with disabilities can come in right now is through the elevator. If the elevator doesn't work, we are not accessible because we no longer have a ramp. Ramps are not that expensive.
And I think to Susan's question, that may be sufficient to get to the next step, which the architects brought up, which is basically with a green light to develop the design to a level where there's an accurate cost estimate that isn't just a conceptual cost estimate, which is what we have now. So that's kind of what I think the committee is looking at, getting that next level so we know concretely what the costs might be. It's, as anyone knows, the construction market in the last few years has been all over the place, but I think some of it's settling down now. The architects can probably speak more to that.
Reggie, do you have a question?
Yeah, the estimated cost. Is that, I'm assuming there's gonna be an additional cost for construction documents and specs and everything. Do we have an idea what that cost is to get to construction documents?
We haven't done a proposal for any specific scope of services because it hasn't been determined what that scope of services is based on these priorities. So we don't have that number. Generally, when we budget these projects, the soft costs, and I think that's mostly what you're talking about, which would be fees and permits and any legal accounting services, anything that's ancillary to the project that makes it go. Anywhere from 15 to 25% can be lumped on top. We don't know what's fairly typical for town projects, but 20% would be a reasonable number to budget at this point.
There are other questions from the board, or you want to go to public?
Yeah.
How do we know we need underpinning? Has there been a soil test done?
Yeah, there were two.
There was two?
Yeah.
So we know that it's settling or that the ground underneath is not solid?
The
or
building
what?
has separated, what is the exact amount, 3 inches?
From the addition to the original?
Right, but it has not moved. We have,
Our previous, our predecessors engaged one of the foremost structural engineers
so it was
and
tribal, and we do have crack monitors. And so we definitely can see, and looking at the history of not only this building, but if you go down the street, we're actually not moving as much as the buildings are, the houses, right?
Okay.
the other thing they pointed out was a lot of the settlement of the rear end occurred very early, like 60, 80 years ago.
Are we, with the underpinning, are we able to lift back up or just stabilize where it's at?
I'm gonna let the architects address that. I think they looked at pinning the building with diagonal torquing.
Yeah, there
Go ahead.
would be a couple of different things. One is helical piles, which are placed under or next to the existing foundations, which go down to solid ground. And that helps stabilize. You really can't lift things back up and into place. You just try to sort of stabilize and then you fill the gaps in an appropriate manner. Some of the other things that have been recommended, and it's in this list that you're seeing on your screen, are serving to stabilize the top of the building because there's a diaphragm action with the roof and the walls, and that diaphragm is not solid right now. So adding some additional beams and providing some additional roof decking would help to stabilize that even further.
And Greg and Laura, if you ever want a tour of the building, because the top of the building is actually the original roof of the Opera House, and there are trusses up there. And I think what Michael is referring to is if you don't secure that, you're not securing the rest of the building.
Right. So the option is either secure, sounds like to me, secure what's there or tear it off. In
Well-
time, something's gonna
But
happen.
you're tearing off a lot. I mean, not just the end, but yeah. It's an old building. It was built in 1900.
No other questions, we can go, John, then Roger, then Karim, if that works. So John, you want to go first?
Sure, thanks. I've made this comment before, but I think as we get to a point where you really need to make a decision about spending money, I would urge the select board to consider it again. This, I think, is a great piece of work. If we decide that we want to preserve the town hall as the place to perform the three functions that it currently performs, have confidence that this is the right plan. It's a $14 million plan. And if we make the commitment to the Preservation Trust that we will be good stewards of the building, and we want to have the things that are in here, which are all perfectly reasonable. Nothing in here is excessive, you know, in the four phases. This is basically making a building that is the building that we would want without going overboard. We should plan on the 14 million-ish. Obviously, Phil is right. There's, you know, that's a conceptual estimate, plus maybe a little bit more, Michael, for soft costs if those are not included. There is some sense of urgency, and so, you know, at least asking for a proposal of what the next phase would cost and giving it a scope, maybe giving us some options, seems like a very reasonable thing to ask, since we haven't asked for it. And I think that it's very feasible that we go ahead. It's very possible that we go ahead with this, but I think it would be highly irresponsible to do so, to actually spend a lot of money, certainly 3.3 million, without at least a cursory examination of what the other options are. The committee was not asked to do that, so I'm not faulting the committee, but the select board needs to ask someone to spend at least a few months to, for example, go and have a conversation with Gail Devine at the rec center, as I did, and ask whether or not they would be willing to, you know, engage with the town on creating a 225-seat theater in a structurally sound building, which is already ADA accessible, and with 2,000 square feet of potential office space right upstairs. To which she was quite open for that conversation. And someone should go to the school committee and ask what the size of the theater is. My understanding is that we are about to build a public space that is considerably larger and more modern and structurally sound than the town hall. I'm not trying to indicate that those are better ideas. They're unexplored ideas. But with $14 million, eventually $14 million investment to make this building, again, not extravagant, but what it should be, what we all would like to see it be, we need to ask the question of whether or not the new theater that we're about to build in the high school and the existing theater that we have that could be renovated is a better or worse option than renovating this. And I can imagine any of those answers being the right ones, including this one. And if this is the right answer, we have a good plan for how to proceed. But at least in parallel, appoint someone or ask this committee to do two things at once. First, get a proposal from our colleagues here as to what the next steps would cost and what it would cost to do the drawings. But at the same time, let's just at least have a cursory examination of what else we could do and what the pros and cons of that would be. To not do that is irresponsible, in my view. Thanks.
John, I'll just say that I have talked with the high school, and I think you know, and I know, that 90% of the programming for Pentangle, and okay, forget Pentangle, 90% of the work that we do is during the school year, which cannot be done on school property.
I don't know that. I know that the 90% is correct. I know that you do a huge amount. I don't know that it can be done on school property. It may not be able to be, but I don't know that.
Yeah, so I don't think we have a back and forth on whether the school is
Right.
a good option. I think John's point is taken that we should look at other options, and that'll be from the select board.
Thank
Roger,
you.
do you want to?
Yeah, I want to echo what John just said. We're asking to make a commitment ultimately to a very large project that's going to cost a very large amount of money in a town that has severe capital needs that need to be met. There are a number, this plan makes perfect sense to me as a layperson, but it's making a whole bunch of a priori assumptions that I don't think we've ever decided on. I don't think we've made a decision about whether or not we need a theater the way the theater is currently constructed or constituted. I don't think we've made enough, we haven't looked enough at what are the functions that need to happen in this building. What are the things that we can do to mitigate without going and committing to a long-term plan to spend probably tens of millions of dollars to fix something that may not ultimately be worth fixing. So I think before, and you know, I agree with John, we should go ahead and get a project plan based on these priorities. But I think these priorities are being assumed without enough discourse about where we need to be, what is the best value added for the town to doing any work on this building or looking at other community facilities or whatever else. I don't think we know. I don't think we're ready to make that kind of commitment, which won't just be for the 3.1 million. Because then next, once it's sunk cost, you're going to move on to the next one. And again, we're talking about, are we going to have to suddenly jump in and take over the water system? What gigantic costs are coming down the pike? And is this something that we can decide without having really looked at all of the functional options that do or do not involve making this building what it was in 1929 or whatever else? Thank you.
So, Karen,
I
you wanna
oh, I don't know how to ask to speak.
go? Okay, who's this?
Lisa Lawler.
Okay, Steve, hold on, it's Crimson waiting for a while, then we'll get to you.
Oh, hold on a second. Here I am. Hi.
Can you hold on 1 second?
Is it okay?
Okay.
Is it okay?
I just want Karim to go first, if you mind, just hold on for 1 second. Someone else is-
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. So I would like to first make a comment that echoes some of what Roger said, which is something that, you know, I've been advocating for a few years, which is each time we look at a major expense, we really should encourage ourselves to get into the habit of putting it as part of the larger picture. Okay, what are all the other bigger plans? Okay, so that people keep in mind that we're not talking in isolation project by project. Okay, we have a number of things hitting us. As I always said, all the chickens are coming to roost at the same time. Okay, so that's one. The second question I have is getting access to the grants, the federal grants, the Preservation Trust. Does that automatically mean that we need to go through the other parts of that plan, or potentially would it cover half of the cost to just do the priority one and then assess if we want to move forward?
No, it's not contingent on anything.
Okay, thank you. So there's a possibility to quote unquote save the building without necessarily having to go through everything else.
So you can sell it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, for example, I mean, I don't know, it could be just to continue using it for at least the foreseeable future in a safe fashion. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa, do you want to go?
Yeah, hi. I apologize for interrupting. You know, I keep hearing that the school is going to be built. No one's made any decision about that. No one's voted about it. No one's really talked about it. So I don't think that the school should be part of any conversation, the new high school. And I've also heard they're discussing a bond issue, but that also has not been seen. So I do have to say for Alita to thank you for discussing these things in advance. And I'm hoping that soon, I'm hoping that the select board reaches out to the high school committee, whoever they are, and asks them to start to discuss this, because we're heading towards the season where we start hearing bonds, and we can't afford all this. I mean, we all know that. You know, we have a water company, we have a sewer problem, we have the building, we have the high school, and I'm asking that you guys reach out to that committee and have them start to come to the select board and discuss this, because we're hearing more, you know, this is only one part of what people want to see this year. So I'm asking, you know, could that be taken up as a conversation?
So thank you. I'll just reiterate for the people in the room that the school committee operates independently from the municipal government. So we don't have really any say over what happens when it comes to any conversation about building a school and not building a school. I will say the select board and the trustee board have been in contact with the school committee and the superintendent over the course of summer about these issues. But any questions relating to the school should be directed to the school committee.
And I understand that, but it is the responsibility of the citizens, of the voters and the taxpayers of this town to to pay for the project. So if we don't know what the project is going to be or how it's going to be funded, or how it doesn't matter if it's private or public. This turns to the responsibility of each taxpayer of the supervisory union.
All right, thank you. Someone, do you have a?
Yeah,
Say your name and.
Yeah, Rich Kozlowski, South Road. I'm a member of the committee. And John brought up, a valid point on what other options there are in place of what some of the functions are of this building. But keep in mind, if we said tomorrow, there are no functions in this building still belongs to the taxpayers of Woodstock. And what is included in phase one is not, when phase one is paid for and finished, and you drive by the building, you're not gonna be like, man, look at all the work they did. You're not gonna see anything. This is all structural stuff. We are still gonna be owners of a building that needs this work. This is not anything that is grandiose. This is merely just to stabilize what we have. And I want to praise the architects because they did a great job. That was one of the first things we asked. Prioritize what needs to be done today, what are the costs of those things, and then what, as time goes on, if we chose to do those things, what are the other phases of the project and how will that affect the taxpayers? But immediately right now, if we stop doing anything in this building tomorrow, we still own a building that has a ton of $3 million worth of deferred maintenance to keep it structurally sound. So that, just to keep that in perspective.
Thank you. So I think Jill Davies has a hand up, and then Chief Green, you wanted to, so Jill.
Okay, so hello. So I was a member of the prior town hall committee, and I've worked for many years on energy in the building. So I think I know the building quite well. I'm just really, I want to support what everybody else has been saying, that I'm extremely worried that we are thinking of spending 1.6 million on part of the building that we're not absolutely convinced we want to keep in the future. And that's all I want to say, because otherwise it would be repetitious.
Thanks, Jill. Chief Green?
David Green. So I was on this committee and I am very much in love with this building and always have been. And unfortunately, you guys have inherited the past sins of previous select boards. I keep hearing that we should move or investigate other areas to go. I don't think it's wise. This is our building. We own it free and clear. It has some problems. But I think if we were to do a phased approach, get this building repaired, the envelope, not look at other buildings or let this die in committee for another 4 years, that we fix the building and keep Pentangle here, because in my mind, this building doesn't work with Pentangle and it also doesn't work with Town Hall. We work cohesively together, we pay bills together. And if they were to go somewhere else, like the high school or the rec center, now we're stuck paying what they pay for rent, what they pay repairs. So, I mean, I would ask that we move forward tonight with finding funding for a construction budget, see where it goes, and maybe bring it up for a special article in the future, very near future. We do have several bonds expiring in the next 3 or 4 years. I'm well aware of the sewer plant and the water issues. But I think if we all pull together, we can make this work. We're not asking for this building to be repaired next year or phase 2 to be done next year or 3 years. This in our minds is a 25-year project. But let's stabilize the building, make it safe. If the heat were to crap out tomorrow, you're going to be renting trailers for employees to do their work, moving computer systems, which is a waste of $200,000 per year. So you try to find funding for a heating system that we were making aware needed to be replaced. And I really get it. It's a hard decision, but it's really something you should think about and maybe let voters take a whack at it. Thank you.
Could you please come up front so we can hear you?
This is Woodstock's town hall. Talk about the school. is the whole Windsor, well, was Windsor. It's not just Woodstock, it's several other towns. So we can't assume that this is going to be improved by all these other towns, and we don't control that from Woodstock. But this is our town hall, and this we control. And if necessary maintenance has been put aside for too long, it's your home. You take care of your home. So I hope that you will support it as it functions right now. And thank you.
So, any other questions, I guess? Any comments? Discussion?
Yeah. One of my, I think I echo what John and Roger have talked about, and one of my concerns is that we are through this, making a decision without a lot of investigation. And I'm concerned when I hear, well, there's also problems with leaking windows and roofing and leaking within the building, yet the $3 million doesn't address any of that. So I feel like this is making that if we approve this, we're making a decision prematurely. That's.
But I do think that the envelope issues are addressed. Correct?
Yeah, and those are very readily achievable grant items like the windows and so forth, 3.8.
Well, we don't have a proposal for construction documents, correct?
Right.
So, I mean, that would be the first thing we'd need. And I would also, I echo what Susan and John said, that we should look at other options, just to look. Doesn't say we have to do them, but, you know, does it make sense? Sell a building to a developer? Nobody shoot me, please.
Well,
And-
that's on you all to do.
No,
that.
but I'm just saying, you know, that's an option. Look at that. Can we go to the sheriff's department, for instance, that has a building there that's probably only used 10% of it? I don't know, but I think we need to have options and not just say, this is the only way we can go.
That, I think we're good with that. I think, you know, this is our best effort to say, we've done our due diligence to say, this is what the status of the building is right now. And it's now in the select board to go and say, okay, look at the other options, and then you can say, I will say, and I think for those of us that are from here, this is the largest public space in Woodstock. It is a destination for people to come. I think I'm more of Chamber of Commerce than I am Pentangle, but you all know that. I mean, you know that. So you can look at the options and you can weigh the decisions. Do you want to take this building down? And gosh knows, in the history of this building, it's happened 3 times where the town has been faced with, do we save this building? And it's, yeah, I think the purpose of our committee is now to say to you all, go for it. Do your research, look at your options.
I would offer, based on what I heard tonight, that we could request of the design team a proposal for the fees associated with creating the next, which would be really a schematic design, I think. Is that right, Michael? Assume you're still on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
And come back.
right now we've got nothing except for what it's gonna cost. Right. No, and that's an estimate. And
Right.
They're never right, so
Well, I think they get finer and finer, right?
they
as
get
you
closer
more
and closer,
information.
yes.
But I think it's fair to say, would we send them out to do that when you want to go an exploratory mission, which is well within your purview? So we could do it simultaneously.
What do
Well,
the
it's a-
construction documents do? Do they give us an idea what this is gonna stay at in different phases?
Well, for phase 1, it'll be a finer tuned estimate based on, so when they did this, of course, there's inflation.
And they did have a professional cost estimator.
Yeah,
So
so I
the
think we're
greater
in the
level
realm.
of detail that the design team has to give the cost estimate, the finer the cost estimate is going to be. So I don't know that we get the construction documents after everything I heard tonight. It sounds like what we should do is get to a schematic or design development cost. Would you agree, Michael? That's probably.
I would, yeah, and, you know, you can take this as you take construction in a phased way, you can take the design in a phased way.
Right.
Do the schematic design, get the better level of detail, a more finely tuned estimate, and then decide what to do from there.
And
You can go to the next.
parallel-
one, to be designed.
Right, parallel with that, they can undertake these other steps that were mentioned tonight by
It could,
citizens.
and there's no, except for 35 years with the being stewards for the building, I mean, you know, we need more information than just
50,
50 or whatever, 100,
we're
doesn't
about
matter.
50 years.
But you know, we need more information, we just can't.
Well, and if you're interested, and we brought this before the select board before, if you're interested in the terms of the easement on the building for Preservation Trust of Vermont and other federal grants, we can surely give you that.
Yeah.
Art, do you have a question?
Yeah, that was, Ray was speaking to the point. I think I have more questions about what the easement would look like and the details associated with it, because, yeah,
Sounds like the committee has some homework.
Yep.
Yeah, estimate together from the design firm for the next phase of services, and also to alert you to grant opportunities that are there, and then what some of the easement terms, what the easement terms would be.
And I think.
So we can come back next month or December and do that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I'm worried that we're sending you to do more work without kind of getting at the core of the issue, which is that we don't have consensus on what the use of this building is and should be. And I don't know how to solve that.
Good point. That's a very good point. And
I think David spoke to that, though.
Yep.
In absence of
Yeah,
somewhere else.
But
this
I
is-
think it is the select board, it is on you to huddle and talk about that.
Right.
We can certainly go do our research. You can go look at options and with John Spector and Jill and whatever. But I think ultimately it's, I hate to say it, but it's on the select board to make a decision. We're just a committee. We can give you more information on fundraising, but you are the decision makers.
And I think the point, or the main point is there's no decision the board needs to make tonight.
Right.
You know, you can ask for nothing to be done and ask them tomorrow to do something as well. So I think if you're worried about putting them on a search that ends nowhere, we can take a beat and talk in a week and decide what we actually, what those questions may be for the committee to research. If you want to look at other options who do that work as well. There's no need for the board to make any vote tonight if they're not comfortable or have a consensus on where they want to go.
Yeah, makes total
Any
sense.
thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. We
Okay.
had talked about maybe trying to form a working committee as well.
Yeah.
Around this issue.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. And next up is meeting schedule discussion.
So this came up, currently the board is scheduled to meet, the first Tuesday of every month at 10 a.m. and then the third Tuesday every month at 6 p.m. Conversation came up with whether or not to change the time of the Tuesday meeting, or maybe then even, eliminate the first Tuesday meeting, go to one meeting a month, for the time being. I think the chair and I talked, and I think the idea we kicked around was with the potential for a lot of budget meetings in the next few months, along with special meetings for God knows what comes up, was to trial doing one meeting a month until a town meeting in March, and then have whatever the new board is after that vote on going forward. So that was one proposal we talked about, but I think we can open up to a discussion of the board and what the board thinks about keeping the status quo, going to one meeting, changing the time of the first day meeting. I think we have a discussion on that if everyone wants to.
So the options before, so keeping, as we do now, evening meeting and a day meeting, changing the time and going down to one meeting.
I mean, options really are anything. I mean, it's not,
Yeah.
it's not multiple choice. It's more fill in the blank. So it's just, I mean, that's how the progression happened.
Okay.
So, but I mean, it's in front of the board now to have a discussion and how you want to proceed.
We didn't have any 10 o'clock meetings in the summer.
I feel like we always seem to have a special meeting thrown in, and I personally like the predictability. I think 10 o'clock is a brutal time. Not because I'm asleep, just because it chops up the middle of the day.
It's okay if you are, Susan.
No, I like the predictability for both the board and the public in general of having a set meeting. If we don't have anything to discuss, we can always cancel it, but when we schedule meetings on 48 hours notice, I don't think it gives people a lot of time to plan to be here. And I also don't want to have 2 night meetings because I don't think it's fair to have staff and our manager have to work that many nights. I like the idea of a 4 o'clock meeting on the other Tuesday. But I just think it's easier to have the set meetings, and if we find we can cancel it, then we can cancel it, but that's my opinion.
I like the 6 o'clock myself.
Yeah, actually, but for a couple of reasons, I think it's better for the public to attend. Even at 10 o'clock, unless somebody's really interested in something, nobody shows up to the meetings. And 4 o'clock, a lot of people are either still working or getting home from work. If we're gonna have a second meeting, I would schedule it for 6 o'clock. And I know that puts more stress and work on you folks, but I just think if we're gonna have a public meeting, let's make sure that the public can attend.
Yeah, and we can decide, well, if we would know ahead of time if we have
If we need it,
items
right,
for the agenda.
yeah.
Have we ever not had a meeting because we didn't have an agenda?
Yeah, I think recently we canceled the last Tuesday meeting.
Okay.
And then I think we canceled September when I was supposed to be on vacation or
Yes,
something, we
yeah.
canceled as well, or we had, I think we had to have a special meeting for some reason. So yeah,
So normally it's been twice a month.
so it's been twice a month, with 1 day meeting. Well, so I think it's like 3 years ago, it was 2 night meetings and they moved it to 1 day.
No, actually, it was
meeting.
just one night meeting. Then at the select board at the time decided that they thought they needed a second meeting during the day.
Okay.
That's where that came from. And then we went, and that's been like that for, I think, a couple of years.
Well, since we have, I see Jill has her hand up, and since we
Yes.
have the few people that actually attend our meetings, we should ask them.
Jill?
So the second meeting was only added when we didn't have a town manager or we had an interim town manager. We always used to just have 1 meeting plus special meetings during the budget, or if there was something really urgent to discuss. 2 meetings is not the norm. It's been through this extraordinary time we've had in the last 5 years.
Special meetings that we had.
Don't.
Okay.
So I mean, this is part of it. I think we've had special meetings just because sometimes just to have them.
Yeah.
I think we're talking about having a better structure about how to plan for meetings, and hopefully that will end some of those special meetings. But this is my 10th month, 9th month, and there's probably been at least 5 or 6 special meetings I know between the select board and the trustees combined.
I know before I was on the select board and I was attending the night meetings, they would sometimes go 3 hours and more. And I thought that was also another reason why the other meeting was added, just because people really didn't want to be here till 9 o'clock at night.
But at that time, I think they also just put things on the agenda because people wanted things on the agenda. And I think if we can control the agenda better, I mean, there's some things that'll come up at the last minute that are an emergency, but I think if we can control the agenda better, I would prefer 1. But if we do 2, I would prefer it at 6 o'clock.
Could we try this 6 o'clock meetings until town meeting?
And we could just cancel them.
I will just say, there is confusion from the public when we do cancel meetings as well. It's kind of inverse because people are planning on it, then the way we get the word out is a normal list or Facebook and people aren't seeing that. I've had people show up day of a meeting thinking there was gonna be a meeting and you can't reach everyone. So it creates the other issue of people expecting a meeting, and then you cancel it, they wonder why you cancel it. So I just want to make that the board as well.
Do we need 2 meetings a month?
I think that's one of the questions in front of the board right now. There's some who think yes, some who think no, so.
I don't know. I think I'm too young on this to answer that. I would say at least the one meeting, and I agree, a set time is better for the public to get used to
Mhm.
when they can come. Myself, I like 6 o'clock, but if a special meeting has to be called, then it could be anytime.
Yeah.
But people need to get here. Need to be able to have the time to get here.
If I could summarize, I think the 4 board members tonight agree that 6 PM is probably the best time for a meeting. So the next question is it 1 meeting a month, or is it 1 scheduled meeting a month, or 2 scheduled months is probably the next decision to be made.
I'm fine with 1. I don't know about anyone else. It's always, it's easier to go to 2 if we need them. If the next couple months show that we really are here till the end of the night, till 9, 8:30, 9 o'clock, then I have no problem going to a second meeting.
It's not that crucial. I just don't want to be here till,
No,
I'd rather
yeah.
spread the agenda out
Yeah.
over 2 meetings than be here for 3 or 4.
Yeah.
That's fine by me too.
I think you should do what makes your life easier, because it's hard enough to do this and get groused at by people like me.
Roger.
So, personally, I prefer the evening because it doesn't cut into my working day. And I think it's more accessible to the public. Personally, I would suggest that you go to 1 meeting right now, because I think the 2 meetings was really kind of a COVID project where you really need to be on top of things. And if you need to go to 2, you go to 2. But again, I would do, if 10 o'clock works better for the people at this table, then do 10 o'clock, whatever
So,
Chief, I think,
I remember it, sir, the 2 meetings came about because they're having regularly scheduled special meetings every fall. Because there was a lot of items that couldn't wait for 30 days after the meeting
Okay.
that needed to be selected. It didn't happen all the time, but it was happening.
Enough. Yeah.
Special meeting for your second meeting to special.
I mean, I think, if we're gonna try something new and potentially only have 1 meeting, there will be special meetings happening for the budget. So it could be a time to experiment, saying, if we realize that in these special budget meetings, we have to tack on select board stuff because there's a time limit, we're gonna have those meetings anyways, so that's good, that's a good thing. So that'd just be another point I'd throw out there as well.
all right, so we all agree 1 night?
1 meeting, 6 o'clock, and then special meetings for the budget.
Yeah, and do you, I guess the other thing, now we have some kind of agreement, do you want to still have the 3rd week? Or the 3rd, or not the 1st, because you have both?
Yeah,
Third, yeah.
3rd, okay.
Does that make sense from your schedule with the trustees and everything?
Yeah, trustees the 2nd week, so it makes sense, and I think we can kind of hold the 1st Tuesday open if we need to have something. But, we're used to it anyway, so. Okay,
Okay.
so I think you probably just want to vote on it.
All right, your motion?
I'll make a motion to move the select board meetings to the first Tuesday,
Third,
Third
Tuesday
Tuesday.
at
Third.
6,
3rd Tuesday of the month at 6 PM.
and not have the second reading
And-
on the first.
Yes, and not have a second reading on the
Is there a
first.
second?
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That was your first motion. Congratulations.
Me and Greg.
Yeah, we'll have that moment, yeah, when she retires at 50 years, we'll give her the minutes from this.
Yeah.
All right, the bids.
Mark,
Mark, what?
so I think traditionally we go out to bid for these different projects. We did that. So we have attached is D and D. Our recommendation for the screen sand would be for them, the 3/8 sand for Pike, the gravel for Pike as well,
Yes.
and then the diesel for Dead River. Would be the recommendations from Mark and myself after reviewing the bids and going through them for the best price and the best service to the municipality.
Any questions?
So the sand is not just D and D, it's the manufactured sand mixed with it, like you have been doing?
No, D&D is screen sand, and then the 3/8 are stone. So we blend
Oh,
it.
yep.
That way,
Yeah.
the back roads.
So it's the same as you've been doing?
Yes, yep.
If we accept the bids?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
Up next, I got asked by Rick, correct? From the SBA to kind of just present what the SBA is available to do for local businesses. So he asked for 5 minutes, just to give people whom still may need help from the flood.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Already, Mary. So thanks for the opportunity. So I came here for multiple reasons. We are still here in the field. The most updated information is that FEMA and SBA, we extended the deadlines for the second time until October 31st. The closest DRC, the DRC is the Disaster Recovery Center. Those are from FEMA, but we were there too. The people can apply there with the SBA, with FEMA, no obligation of benefits. And that's in Ludlow, in the Main Street. So that's the closest. So always, but the 800 number is very important because they can answer all the questions there. They can give the status of the applications on the homeowners flyer. 800-659-2955. That number is very important. So this paper is for procedures. But I also came because we are visiting the Chamber of Commerce. I'm glad the Emergency Management Director is here too. The media, the select boards, the town managers, to help us to reach the most people as possible, sharing the information, because that's what we want to do, to reach the most survivors or citizens that are affected, the most people as possible. That's our priority. The people is taking advantage of this. We have approved more than 20 million. So the main differences between FEMA, SBA, and USDA, we don't provide funds for public assistance for the government. We only provide funds for businesses, homeowners, renters, and nonprofits. USDA, they provide funds for public assistance too, and they provide funds for homeowners repairs and businesses repair too. FEMA, they provide individual assistance and public assistance, but we don't provide funds for government. You all know that FEMA is grant free money, but the people get discouraged with us because we are low interest rate loan from the federal government. But that's why we visit and we inform about us. It's not only general information, and that's why I'm here too, to explain how the people can use these and take advantage of these funds, even though that they call these loans, but they are lenient kind loans. I'll explain how some people use these in their advantage. For example, some people that had insurance, they might get the money faster with us because the purpose is to recover, to rebuild quicker, faster, instead of waiting for the payment or settlement for months or a year or more with the insurance company. That's one way. Because we have the 1 year deferment with 0% interest rates, no nothing that year, the interest rate don't increase, and you don't have to pay nothing for that year. That's why they do that. Also, if FEMA denies you, we come into play. If FEMA give you funds but are not enough, for example, that denegation letter is very important because the people can attach that for the application of FEMA. If FEMA gave you 20, 30,000, or the maximum that is 41, that if they gave you that, is because you were totally flooded, you lost everything. So, but if let's say that you received less, 10, 20, 30,000, and you are not satisfied, and they refer you to SBA, you can put that denegation letter because the grounds are there why they are denying you. You put that as grounds for the appeal. So that's another way. I always recommend on times of disaster to always apply with everything because you never know from what part are you going to get the money faster. With Red Cross, Salvation Army, with all kind of assistance, federal assistance, state assistance. We also have a resource partner for businesses. That's the SBDC, a Small Business Development Center. All the counties have a business advisor. That means that we give them funds and the state too, so they work for both, for the federal agency and for the state, and they are helping with all these applications. They know about USDA, SBA, FEMA. They are helping with the application of the state, so they are a very valuable resource. I think that the name of because I visited that building, but I think that they are not there anymore in Springfield. They had the office. I think that the name is DERA. DERA, a Small Business Development Center here for Windsor County. So that's a very good resource for businesses. I always, as a general rule, the businesses, homeowners, renters, and nonprofits register fair with FEMA. But the issue is that, for example, with businesses, they don't provide funds for businesses, so but they need to register fair with FEMA because FEMA give them a number that we need that for our application. So they are going to refer the businesses to SBA anyways, but the exception is that the businesses can apply directly with the SBA. That's very important to know. Here is the fact sheet of the USDA. You know that they have a part for farmers, a part for rural development. So also, here is a flyer for homeowners, renters, and businesses, nonprofits for SBA. Here is the flyer that I was talking about the SBA resource partners. Here is the link, sba.gov/local assistance. That means that we have resource partners for women, veterans, everything is related to businesses. And SBDC is so important, is very important too, because they know about marketing, business plans. They can help the businesses with any kind of topic. They are a very good resource, the SBDC. So, yeah. Also, right now we don't have, we had a BRC in Ludlow too. That's a business recovery center from SBA, but that's already closed. No anymore BRCs in the entire Declaration of Vermont, the Presidential Declaration. So also I give another advice because always the people get discouraged with us, but nothing to get discouraged because no fees apply. The people don't have to accept it. They can ask for less, they can ask for more. I always say this example, when FEMA denies you, and most of the time they refer this is for homeowners or renters, they refer them to SBA. Because they want to know, because we were jointly, they want to know if that person really can pay for a loan. It's like a financial verification process. So that's why they send the citizens, the survivors, to SBA. So if you are denied by FEMA and then referred to SBA, and you are denied by SBA, SBA might refer you back to FEMA, and FEMA might give you all the other disaster assistance like grants. It's not guaranteed, but at least the people can have hope to receive something. I always explain that. Even though if you don't want it, if you don't qualify, apply, complete the procedures, because once again, that denegation letter is the evidence to apply with other kind of resources or agencies or nonprofits. You know what I mean? So always it's important to complete the procedures with the SBA. Because look, I think we are not the best option, but we are, for some people, we are the only option or best option. And to summarize, we are an alternative.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all your.
Thank you. The wastewater update.
Yeah, so I believe we have a meeting scheduled next week, with yourself and, the vice chair.
Nobody got back to us about when.
Okay, that's why I don't have it on my schedule.
Contractor.
So I had a conversation with Hoyle Tanner, the engineering firm that the town, the town,
Jumped ahead.
had hired, to work on the main wastewater renovation project. They requested a meeting with myself and the chair and the vice chair, to go over kind of where we're at and what they see going forward. The recommendation they're gonna make in that meeting is for the town to push the potential vote for a bond for that project into next year. It's their belief that not enough has been done to have a successful vote in March. And they recommend us having more time to really get the word out, really get public support behind it. So they're, I believe, going to recommend having a special vote in November of next year, along with the election, to try to get full voter attendance on the ballot. So that means it'll be next week, and then we can report back to the rest of the select board at that time, and the public as well.
Next week.
Do you know if you do
Thursday.
Next.
this Thursday?
Thursday at 1 o'clock. Thursday the 19th, 1 o'clock.
Yes. Yeah, here.
And this is for the village.
The main one in the village, yeah, yeah.
Is this a time sensitive?
Yes and no. It doesn't mean done, no, it doesn't need to be done tomorrow. But in a year or two, then the states will come down for us on new permits.
So this is a state mandated.
Mandated, yeah.
More than an update.
Yeah, so it's state mandated for some updates that need to get it done. It's also will, in theory, allow us to develop more in that section of town by having more capacity for sewer, which is an issue we have right now.
Okay.
Got my calendar with. Please contract discussion.
Yeah, so this is more of a, again, an update. The current contract between the village and the town for police coverage for 40 hours a week is up on June 30th, 2024, which is obviously about 8 months away. However, with the budget season underway, it's important for the town and village to get together and have discussions about what's going to happen next, because as we know, the town pays about $4,000+ to the village, which is about half of their budget for the police. So if there are any changes, that need to be known now so we can be ready. But also, I think just so we can know what's going to happen going forward. So the plan is for myself and the chair and vice chair of both boards to get together and have a conversation, and then at that point invite the police chief in, have a larger conversation, and then hopefully have something, some kind of compromise or a deal at that point, and then go from there.
And that's the one that we don't have date for, that a doodle
Right.
poll was sent out for
Yeah.
yesterday. today.
Yeah, so there's no date set, but we'll get one on the calendar as soon as possible.
All right. David,
Yeah, Roger, yeah, so going up. I will say, Roger emailed us earlier today, and we've been going back and forth, but thank you for your email.
Yeah, and I sent Eric and Ray an email. I have a whole bunch of questions about this contract. And there may be more information that is not publicly available, or at least easily publicly available, but I don't see where all the money is going. The village has something like 271,000 in its expense report that is the FTE and a whole bunch of ancillary stuff like the car and everything else. And I don't know what adds up to the other 404,000,
Yeah.
44K, 440K, something like that, right? So I would just, as we go forward into the budget, first of all, I would encourage, I know it's kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul, so it's kind of the weird municipal structure we have here. But but I would like to really look at this very, very carefully. And then I would like to have the information about where, in fact, the money is being spent, made more publicly available and more explicit. I'd like to see how many on-call calls are made, how many hours are spent on on-call calls that are excessive, that are excess to the 40 hours a week. Because otherwise, as a citizen, I just don't know where this 45% of the budget is going to one FTE and one police car. There's got to be more.
So just, I don't have the contract in front of me, but the basis of it from my recollection is there's a staffing a full-time officer and a few other things.
Right.
Then the contract states 41% of this cost will be paid by the town. So say like fuel, for example, 41% of that total cost will be paid from the town. So that's where the rest of the money kind of ends up. So you have the full-time person for like $235,000, then the rest is kind of allocated at 41% to everything else.
Okay, and that makes sense if that's how the budget spreadsheet was built for the village's budget. But unless there's other money somewhere that is not reflected in the budgets, that only comes up to $271,000.
Yeah.
And then, but the contract is for $440,000. So I would like to know where the rest of that money is. I'm not saying that it's, that there's it's just, I don't know. I have no idea.
And
I don't know what the value benefit of what we're getting in the town is reflected.
Yeah. I'm not prepared to speak to that.
Of course not.
What I want to say is if you want to schedule time with me, we can go over it in my office together. I'm happy to walk through it with you with everything in front of us.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great.
And then I know you will, but if and when there's a new contract that we voted on, I would suggest showing up and asking those questions and make sure we have those answers for you.
Yeah, and it would be great if we could see the contract beforehand. Or
Yeah, if it's gonna
after
be voted on, it should be available ahead of time.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks.
David.
Good evening again. So I'll go over your recommendation and approval is the EMS per capita fees to our prescribing towns. There are 5 of them that we provide EMS service to, and this is just the per capita fee to have the honor of us coming into your town. Okay, so if there's an EMS call and we pick up a patient, that's billed separately and everything else.
We have contracts with these towns.
Yes,
And are they annual or?
every 3 years.
Every 3? So
Yes.
some of these are in the middle of a contract.
They're all the same 3 years.
Okay.
We've got them all in line.
Okay.
They are asking some of them, which we just did the 3-year contract last year. To have this,
Oh, I just remember we reviewed Pomfret most recently, I thought. But anyway, go ahead.
no, I thought I got them all in line, but anywho, that this become a 3-year per capita fee, which I said I'd be willing to entertain, and you'd only have to see me once every 3 years instead of.
So presently, we're not bound to these numbers. It's just your recommendation, right?
Correct, yes.
But they want in the future to have these numbers built into the contract, so they won't change over 3 years.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
You might have answered this by answering Susan's question, David, and then I apologize. But so last week at the budget meeting, we talked a lot about costs increasing, especially in the fire department, between salaries and ambulances. So I'm wondering why the fees wouldn't increase.
Yep, so they took a huge hit when we first started this 3 years ago, we more than doubled what they were paying. So we're giving them a little bit of time to reel over, to adjust.
Adjust.
Yes. Yes. And I mean, I looked at it, raising it 10%, that adds to $4,000. Is it really worth the negativity that we'll get from the other towns to do that?
Do you feel you can make it work for 3 years at this price? I guess.
Well, no, that'd be in the future. Right now, this is annual. This is annual. So, but in the future, we could say on year one that we do a 5%, year two, 6%, or whatever we dream up. But that way they wouldn't have to wait for this every year to get a budget.
Oh, okay.
So, which is really their end game.
So this is for 3 years.
No.
No, this is, yeah.
That's right, okay,
Yeah.
that's what I was
We're
trying.
talking about two separate things. Yeah,
Yeah,
this is just
okay.
for FY 24, 25.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I saw, and I'm thinking,
Yeah.
you're saying 3 years.
Right.
We might.
I mean, I trust the guy in
After I-
the suit, but the guy in, not in a suit. I can't trust him.
Plus, after what I said about town hall, it's probably got, fire truck ready to run me over when I get in the car.
Ray, I'll never hold that against.
Might be
No,
something
no,
else. Okay, is there a motion?
I'll move, we accept the per capita fees for 2024-25 fiscal year.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you, chief. Up next, the EDC.
Thanks. The agenda item says a housing discussion, but there's actually 3 items. The housing one can go first. I think the other 2 won't take very long. Just the only intro, just a 1-sentence intro, Joe, if that's all right. Is it, if you remember 4 months ago, you all approved 3 or 4 months ago, you approved a series of a second wave of housing incentives. Jill can give you a brief update as to how those are going. They're going very well. But you also asked us to investigate incentives for existing landlords who have always been renting, to the local workforce at reasonable rates. And that's what this topic is partly about. So Jill, go ahead.
Actually, Trina's going to talk first.
Oh, sorry.
We're going to present these in the order. We thought we'd do an easier version first. So Trina's going to talk about the ADU program and what we think we could do there.
Hello, Rena Tolliver. I'm the housing advisor for the EDC. And I'm here to present an idea, if you will, for the new ADU and multi-unit housing. Has to do with tax exemption or possibly tax stabilization. We think that there's an opportunity to increase the supply of housing here. We'd like to get the municipality involved in building upon the EDC programs that have been established. And it can be done with the taxation or exemption. So I'm here to just share that idea with you. And if it's something that you feel has some teeth and you're interested and want us to move forward, the next step would be for us to consult with the Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns with the introduction that we could do so. I think that's a municipal resource. So right now, to begin, the issue is that the property taxes are a significant factor in the cost of building new units, whether it's an ADU or a home here in Woodstock. And even expanding or improving existing units. So it can be a deterrent for some folks to get involved in the programs that we've established just because of the property tax. And we've heard that on many occasions. And David Green's not here, but I think he's even alluded to it at one of the prior meetings. This has come up. So what we'd like to do is propose there's an opportunity for us to encourage property owners to build these. We already are giving $10,000 through the EDC. That's with the EDC 1% local option tax funds. However, when they're building these properties, their assessments are going up on the values of their property. And in some cases, say for example, you build a $200,000 ADU. I put some calculations in here based off last year's tax rates. That would increase the municipal taxes for that person $1,300 a year. And the state tax based off last year's rates, $3,600 a year. So you're looking at what, a $5,000 increase there. So basically, the thought is that the property tax increase that these folks are incurring to build these housing units in Woodstock, it reduces the value of our original incentive that we're giving them, the $10,000. And they're building a $200,000 unit. So I've done some research and utilized some of the education and things I learned in the lister's office when I was working there for 3 years. And we think there's an opportunity to use the exemptions or stabilization on this new development. And it could be used to lower the taxes for a specified period of time for these new ADUs or multi-unit homes. There are a few examples here. I'm not going to get into it, but this is a common thing used in other local governments across the United States. And even locally here in Vermont, there's towns that are using tax exemptions or stabilization to incent development. So the first one that one of the proposed solutions is to incentivize specifically for those building the smaller multi-unit and ADU units. We believe that it might be a good opportunity to make this eligible for people that are building in the area on their own, or those that are also involved in the EDC program. So there's two different, I guess, target audiences, if you will, that these could be used for. And just to kind of give you some numbers, because I know John mentioned numbers. Right now we have 15 units that are in play housing units, whether it's an ADU or multi-unit, that are in the EDC programs now since it started in June of last year. So of those, we have 12 units that are actually in the new dwelling, not a rental incentive, but new dwelling. So 12 of those. One of the statutes that we are going to recommend is 3836. And basically with that statute, you could reduce the assessment of those properties by $75,000. And it's for a set period of time, 3 years. And so in this case, specific to where we are now, we have 12 units that this could potentially apply to. So one is already rented, the others are in construction, probably due in the next couple of years. But basically, you know, we are suggesting that we apply that statute to give them a little bit of a break on their property tax. And we also are suggesting that eligible property owners are exempt or from paying zoning and permit fees. The other idea is to take this beyond just the ADU and multi-unit development and use it for housing development in general. Taking it a step further, if you will. It could be for property owners who build single families or multi-family homes. We could put, you can define these programs for stabilization to be very specific with a total cost, say $600,000 on page 2 that we're using here. And those programs could be for people that live here in Woodstock, that live in the home, residential homes, and or it could be for homes that are rented to local workers, again, focused on the keeping it local aspect, that we, if they don't live here, that they rent it to somebody who's working here. So we still get the benefit of having a local worker as part of the program and good use of this space. So one thing that the statutes on page 3, 3836 is actually an exemption that's already out there. It's in the Lister's handbook, it's referenced there. And this gives you the exact verbiage here. So Eric, I know you had some questions. I thought I could address some of those here if
Yeah,
you'd like.
Trina, just keep it brief because we don't want to go into the detail. We want to stay with the principle that we're not asking for your authority for such a program. We're asking for your, we're asking whether you're interested in taking this further and using a legal resource. Because we've about come to the end of our knowledge and now we need legal advice, but we don't want to incur those costs until we know that we have your enthusiastic endorsement.
Right, thank you, Jill. So the 3836 is already in statute. That's a very easy one to work out, as opposed to the stabilization agreements. Those are going to take a lot more work. We have to actually define and build those out. There were some examples that were in the links on the document, like Highgate and some others. That Bird is trying to propose some stabilization agreements now as well to also incentivize housing development. But I would say that, you know, the one that's, if you're cherry picking, 3836 is already right there. And that one specifically on your questions, you'd ask some questions about how some of the things we're proposing here might affect our townwide reappraisal in 2 years. And in my opinion, the answer is that it would not, because they're still coming in and assessing everything. All the properties are getting assessed. Whatever we do here, whether it's an exemption or the stabilization agreement, is off of that assessment. So everyone will still be reassessed and brought whole, if you will, with the values of Woodstock. Correct. The other question you asked is tracking the timelines and when these could be done. There's a portion in the handbook, and it's also in the lister's office. It's called voted contracts. We use a couple of those in the town right now, but those have a beginning and end, and the statute that they're associated with entered into the system, so they're tracked when they do the 411 every year. Okay. And then as far as reducing property tax, how much are we asking? It depends. If you went with a 3836, this is already said that it's the first 75,000 off the building and it's for 3 years. So it's already well defined what it is and how to apply it. And that equates to about $500 in municipal tax, and to be determined if it would affect education tax, because I believe it has to be approved by the VEPC to do so. Part of the next steps we want to take.
So I can ask a question on that?
Correct.
So if we have a house that's, if we're doing this with a house that's following that, the town's tax would go down. The first 75,000 would not be taxed, right?
The assessed grand list value would be, yes, 75,000 off the
Would the
assessment.
school tax be for the whole property as well?
Correct. So there are some of these statutes that the municipal side will be reduced,
The school
and
tax.
then the education side is not reduced, and the town makes it up. We do that, for example.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt.
Yeah.
This is a great example of how we've come to the end of our knowledge, and we need a lawyer, because
Yes.
Trina and I do not agree on this. So
Yeah.
we really don't want to get into this level of detail. We just want to ask
That's why
you.
we want to go to the VLCT.
Right.
Or an attorney, and it's worthwhile for us to even continue down this path and this adventure.
Susan, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just have a question of, and I don't know, maybe you don't know, you haven't gotten this far in your own analysis.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, you know, obviously, I read 3836 to say it would reduce the education tax as well, but so that's going to raise everyone else's in town
Right.
taxes to some degree. Is that an amount the EDC is proposing? to make
No, Susan, we're not proposing that the education taxes are cut. And so we'd like to work with a lawyer to work out how to do this. So that's not part of our proposal.
Okay, so then even limiting the town tax, obviously that's going to reflect on everyone else's tax bills. It may not be significant, but that's where my question is. That
Right. So with the ADUs, because they were never there, it's like you didn't tax them.
Yeah.
So other people are going to pick up a little bit of extra, but it's not like you're reducing. It's not like you're reducing some people's tax. They're just not going to get the extra.
Correct. So on the $200,000 example to build the ADU, say that's their assessed value is increased by that amount. We're just, that's all new to the grand list, minus the 75,000 on that statute. So the town still sees an increase of 125,000 in assessed value being taxed. So it wasn't there before because it's new development. So
what happens if somebody sells the house?
this goes away. We could put that in there.
I just,
Yeah, that's a good question. That's, some of these are gonna be more detailed that we need to ask the attorney. But I would assume that if the ownership, the statute follows the owner, and if you're voting in, this parcel gonna be in it, actually it falls to the land. So if it's 3 years, they would probably be set for 3 years, whether they sell it or not. But those are legal questions we need to ask.
So when you, sorry, Frances, when you're talking about using VLCT for law, are you hoping a referral through the town so the services are free? Are you just looking for an attorney? You're shaking your head, Joe, so you're hoping for a referral for a free consultation with a lawyer?
Yes, we're wondering how far we can go with free legal services, and it might be that they say not very far, and then
Maybe about 3 hours.
we have a lawyer that we're working with on the rest of the housing programs, so we'd probably revert to him, but we wanted to explore this route.
Okay. Sorry, Ray. I interrupted
That'll be
you.
a question for the attorney. I'm writing.
why, I guess my question was gonna be, who's gonna pay for the attorney?
Yeah.
EDC funds?
So, yes, yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
The hope is that-
This is
Yes,
an,
we'd like- yeah.
we're talking about an EDC program that we want to approve, and we could do that with EDC funds. I'm going to change the conversation when I talk about the next option.
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify, that this that we're talking about paying for, that we're asking tonight is please, I don't know that we needed to ask permission to call the VLCT for free advice as part of our membership, but we're asking for that. That no one's going to pay anything for what we're asking for tonight. If once we speak with the VLCT attorneys and they tell us what they can tell us, if that's not sufficient for us to come back to you with a proposal, then the Housing Working Group has funds for legal support for all across the board for the housing programs. That's a piece of they've allocated a small piece of their budget for kind of legal advice and so forth, and we'll start to use that. But hopefully we may not need to. No one is committing any money tonight. We're just asking you, can we call the VLCT? Is that correct, Joe?
Yes.
It's pretty simple request. Maybe we didn't need to ask.
Well, so it's not only that, it's is the select board interested in going this route, because it doesn't feel like it's just an EDC matter.
Yeah, and we don't want to waste your time, I guess, that's the point. If you're dead set against this, no matter what the lawyers say, then we won't waste the time.
These tax breaks last for the entirety that they're.
3 years.
3 years. And if you're using a tax stabilization agreement, those are capped at 10 years, but you can define the period within your stabilization program.
Can I just make
The duration shall not exceed 3 years. So.
So may I ask you to raise up and not get into the detail, because we do not know that the detail is correct. We're not lawyers, and you can ask questions till the cows come home, and we don't know the answers, but a lawyer does. The question is, are you interested in exploring tax relief as an option to help the housing situation in Woodstock?
I am. Yeah, no, I would say that, you should go forward.
Okay, great, thank you. So we'll go forwards and we'll work out what to do, what we can do, how to do this well.
And come back to you with a proposal. Once again.
A formal.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so let's go on to the next one, which is trickier. So the next one is talking about existing long-term landlords who are doing the right thing and renting their homes to local workers, and very often keeping the rent below market rent. So this was an issue that came from you, to ask us, is there something that we should be doing to help existing landlords, not just not just new units? This is an issue that the EDC hasn't come to agreement on yet as to whether we want to expand our objective to maintain long-term rental units. Our objective right now is just to increase the number of them. So as we've looked at alternative solutions to help the property landlord who is doing the right thing, we could use this property tax stabilization again in this way. We could identify, or actually they would self-identify. So people could come to us and say, I have this unit and I am renting it at this particular rent, and it is, it could have a market rent or a short-term rental rate of blah, blah, blah. And then they would ask for a tax reduction. We would probably suggest that the rent rates that they charge are something that we use on our other programs, because we're keeping track of rental rates, and our current people in our programs have to promise to rent below a certain rent. So this is pushing the envelope a little bit further than the first proposal. And because this is reducing people's tax, this is actually saying the whole community will pick up that difference and share it.
Hey, Joe, is this a proposal for tonight or just a conversation?
It's a conversation, and to ask the same questions. Is the town interested in following this up and working out the detail to find out, from a legal perspective, to find out how this could work? And this is the one that, should the cost start incurring a lot, we're not sure that the EDC funds will completely cover it. So we would be more cautious. We are being more cautious as the EDC Housing Working Group.
And so this was Susan's questions from before, that this is a scenario where the tax will actually go down and then someone will have to cover the ad tax. Susan Ford's taxes will go down, but then Laura has to cover that difference, or everyone else covers that difference. Okay.
Yes. So we'd want to do some modeling to show the impact of this on other taxpayers, I would think. That if you give one person an incentive, how does it work out for everybody else? You could model that. The one thing we don't know is how many long-term rental owners there are and how many would take advantage of this. It's a bit of a big unknown.
And this wouldn't be, I'm not in the details, but again, this would be from the day they apply, not going back to when they started renting apartments?
Yes, it would be a new program, so you'd have to say from now, I think. Otherwise, who knows? You could go back 50 years, Eric.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think it would be in effect after it was voted on to move forward with it and do the tax stabilization.
Are we asking Jill the same request to get some legal advice as to how this would work and work out the details?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I think it's also more, is the board excited about this proposal?
No, right, correct.
Yeah,
And if you are, the next step would be to get free legal advice. If you're not, then there is no next step.
Right.
Again, this is in response to the question you asked, what could we do for existing homeowners who are already renting to workers? And so the answer is we could give them
renting it below market rates is key here.
But they are getting the money from the EDC, correct?
No, these are people that we are
that's a big question to debate.
existing landlords.
So existing landlords who are renting at market or low, but are not part of the EDC program currently. Okay.
Right. So sorry, Ray, carry on.
I was gonna say, so basically, instead of the EDC funding this, the town will fund this.
Every single person in the town who is not applying for this program will pay a little bit towards it.
This has the potential to affect market rates for rent in the area. It's one example of something positive that could come out of it too, in addition to rewarding those that are doing the right thing already.
I'm wondering if there's any way to find out, just, I don't know, more than an anecdote, if there are people that actually, I
Would be interested.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if the EDC was funding this like they were funding everybody else, I'd have no problem with it, but now you're asking all the taxpayers to pick up a program that the EDC started and oversees.
No, no,
Well,
no,
we
no.
haven't started this, we haven't started this program, Ray.
No,
The
but
new
I'm
program.
talking about the housing program, the incentive.
Well,
incentive.
we have a housing program and we have a housing initiative going on and we have certain programs. In each year, we take a look at what programs we have and what programs we'd like to add, and then we go and ask for money. This is a program that we haven't asked for any money from the EDC at all. And we're actually saying, could there be a contribution from everybody in town, not just EDC funds?
But just to be clear, Ray, this is not, the people who would be eligible for this are not currently eligible for the EDC programs.
Correct, and
That
that's
was
what
the
I'm
question.
saying.
Yeah.
And that's what the question was back last April and whenever it was, is what can the EDC do to fund people that are already renting at below market rates or at market rates that aren't raising their rents? So
I see. Sorry. If the question was, what can the EDC do? Then this is premature. We'll go back as an EDC. We're not recommending this or not recommending it. The working group wanted to get a pulse from the select board, which we thought was fine. I remember the question is, what can we do? And it was a royal we, so we didn't exclude the select board. But if that was the question, again, it's just we collectively may have remembered it slightly differently, but if the question was, what can the EDC do, then this does not yet answer that question. We have more discussion.
Right, except that we could go down the same route, right, and consult with lawyers and start working out the numbers, and then we first of all we go to the EDC and say, is this something you would be interested in, and if so, great, and if not, then we come to you and say, do you want to do it?
Right.
Or do we want to recommend it to the voters as far as?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Roger has a question.
Roger, come on.
I'd just like to suggest that you go forward with the exploration on this last option. I think we should look for every arrow in the quiver. Obviously, we need to model it and know if it's gonna raise my taxes by $100, great. If it's gonna raise my taxes by $5,000, not so great. So I think it's worth an exploration. And we're not gonna solve it with one program. We're gonna solve it with, or maybe not solve it, but at least affect it with a whole bunch of different.
And my only concern is, spending $3,000 in legal fees to find that there's nobody that applies.
Certainly, I would think that the person who brought the question first to the select board would want to apply, and he has about 3 or 4 units.
Yeah.
So we've got baseline.
But I think what you're saying, Susan, is part of the work we should do before we come back to the select board and with the EDC, we'd ask the same question, is how is the questions you asked, Susan, which is, what's the scope of this?
Right. Yeah.
So Joe, let's just add that, try to figure that out.
Gauge interest. Okay.
Well, what we could do is limit the scope, right? We could say the first this number who apply, and then that could give us a defined amount of money just to run it as an experiment.
All right, well, we can take that offline. I mean, the EDC can do that. I don't know that the select board can give, 7 tax exempt. Anyway, we need to ask a lawyer, as you said.
Lots of questions.
We've reached the limit.
So, can I just, for my own edifice, recap that the ADU multi-unit, you are very much interested in us doing our homework on that one and the statute that's already readily available, and existing landlord gauge some interest, find out to some modeling, but maybe spend less time on it if it's going to end up being a lot of time with an attorney to create some type of stabilization.
Unless you know that the population is out there.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go forwards.
Yep. Appreciate it.
The second and third items, just very quickly. The second one does relate to housing, but I would just like to present it. It's really an accounting type issue. When we created all of the housing programs, we created them, I think mistakenly, as two separate grants and two separate programs, and we allocated specific pools of funds to them. One was to ADUs, which legally, I'm told by Jill and Trina, is a single unit. There's no such thing as a 2-unit ADU. There's a multi-unit thing. Am I using the right words, Jill? A multi-unit thing and an ADU.
Yes.
And we originally had an ADU program. We then started getting people who came to us and said, we'd like to build more than one unit, to which our reaction, I think appropriately, was great. But because they're legally two different things and our process is slightly different, the permitting is slightly different and the names are different, we made the mistake of creating a separate grant. We got approval from you for that and we put X tens of thousands of dollars into that. It turns out that both programs achieve the identical objective, which is the building of ADUs. The only difference, other than the permitting process, the criteria are the same, the incentive is the same, it's $10,000 per unit. The only difference is that we call them something different. We now find that we didn't quite predict what the mix was, and we're running out. We have more demand in one pool and less demand in the other. And we'd like to combine the two pools of money without allocating any more money and just basically call it a ADU / multi-unit program. We'd like to just combine the two grants, put the funds together. And now if we get more single unit applications, we'll use the money for that. It's first come, first serve until we run out of funds. If we get more multi-unit applications, we'll use the funds for that. It's just operationally, we don't want to have to turn down someone who wants to build an ADU because we don't have any single unit funds left. We only have multi-unit funds left, but no one wants to build multi-units, or vice versa. And we've already run into this once, and we don't want to. And so we're running into this problem now, and we don't want to say no to someone who wants to build an ADU. It doesn't make any sense.
So these were the ones that were approved in March of 2022. So one was rental.
No, this has nothing to do with the rental program. There's 3 programs, 1 rental program and 2 what I think of as ADU programs, but one is a single ADU program, one is a multiple unit program. You can't call it an ADU, I guess.
Right, but I looked at the grants was this done after March of 2022?
I believe the multi-unit one was done afterwards, wasn't it, Jill? But the single unit one was done in March.
Yes, we didn't introduce a multi-unit one till 2023, did we?
Right. I think that's correct. So Ray, I think we added funds to the 8 single unit one in 2023 in April. In this discussion, I believe, if I recall right, I could check. I thought we added funds to the single unit one and created the multi-unit one. But we certainly.
You could be right. I don't have that information in
Okay.
front of me.
Well, anyway, all of these.
You just want to lump them together.
We just want to lump them together. It's to say it doesn't. We're not asking for any more funds. It's just an it's an administrative thing. We'll continue. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. The town may have them all in the same pot anyway, as far as their accounting goes.
No,
I don't know.
Trina, they don't. Sorry.
So you'd be putting a burr in the saddle for their administrative process, though. But
No, Trina. No, there's no change to the administrative process. It's not.
we just don't have to we can say a unit. We have a housing unit that we want to approve, period. It doesn't matter if it's ADU or multi-unit. They're going to take the money out of the right bucket.
Correct.
Yeah, that's it.
There's going to be, yes, correct. That will all be done properly.
Probably should, yeah, yeah.
I move that we allow the EDC to combine the EDU, ADU and multi-unit pots for their grant purposes. Does that do it?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. The last one is this is allocating up to $535 for a grant to a group of not-for-profit organizations that are providing food service on the green. As you know, the trustees approved the well, Seton, why don't you just explain very briefly? Seton, in effect, the trustees are the applicant, and the EDC approved this unanimously. As with all grants, we come to the select board for approval.
Yeah, so long story short, as we've had in previous years, there's not a lot of food options on Sundays and Mondays. The trustees have spent a lot of time trying to figure out how we can best serve residents, workers, and of course tourists. And knowing that foliage is the busiest time of year, we asked people to serve food on the green on Sundays and Mondays. We got a lot of responses from nonprofits. And one of the catches that we discovered early on was there's a requirement when you have a permit on the green to have a certificate of insurance. It obviously protects the municipality, the taxpayers, and it also protects whoever's doing the serving or an event on the green. So that's a requirement. A lot of commercial places for those one-day things, it can get into the hundreds of dollars. And so those nonprofits very quickly said, thanks for the offer, but this is going to cut too much into our profits. Fortunately, I was at the VLCT town fair at the time, so I was able to grab somebody who literally manages our insurance and ask for a suggestion. She turned me on to a program that is administered through VLCT that does one-day insurance, but for a much lower rate. So we were able to get that cost down to about $75 a day for a one-day event, which is much cheaper than anything that you would Google. And then the next question was, that was still pretty steep for some of the nonprofits. So in conversations with Eric and with some people at VLCT, we heard that other towns, sort of had little pots of money they held sort of to the side and would use that for nonprofits to defer those costs. So we talked about that possibility and then said, hey, one of the reasons we're doing this is because we have a lot of tourists and we have a wonderful marketing team that is bringing droves in. So, hey, maybe the EDC can help us out. So John generously added it to an agenda. And it looks like it's going to be, as he said, no more than $500 some odd. I'm still getting the receipts in. But if you've been in the village for the past couple of weeks, that, there was one day that the Welcome Center got over 2,000 people. I mean, it's been literally unprecedented this year. And I know those groups, at some point we've had 2 groups on the green, at some point we've had 4, and they've all run out of food. So we think it was really successful. But we just wanted to make sure that since they are sort of providing a service for us and helping us with tourists and feeding people that are here, that we wanted to make that as easy as possible. And if that was the incentive to get food, then that's fine. And we would sort of consider it a pilot project this year. And as we look at foliage next year, decide if it's something we want to do again.
So is this reimbursement?
Yeah, it's reimbursement. So the COIs obviously had to be purchased before they're set up.
Yes. So the EDC recommends this. This is a regular EDC grant. We thought it was economic development for the reasons that Seton said, so we're recommending it.
And I'll say one of the biggest complaints I hear is people come here on Sunday, Mondays, and there's nowhere to eat. And we do the work through mostly Seton. We saw that issue this year. And I just anecdotally one Monday I walked by the soup sign, called my wife, said what soup she wanted, went back and it was already gone. So they've been very successful. And it's funny for you, not for me. I go home and say without soup. But I think it's been very successful, and I think it gives an option to increase tourism on those days and have an option for people. So it's been very good.
I'm not sure we need to increase tourism.
Yeah, really. Okay, is there a motion?
I move we approve the request.
535.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay, you're all set.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, everybody.
And I could just thank Seton for did a lot of legwork on this for the trustees and the nonprofits, working over the weekends and organize the whole thing. So thank you for all your work you did.
And next up is sewer abatement.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're leaving for your favorite topic.
Does sewer abatement,
So the first one is for 4 Mechanic Street. It's our understanding that the resident did not update the address with us, so the sewer bill was mailed to the old address. The resident has paid the total bill, but then asked for an abatement for the interest that accrued for not paying it.
Move we deny, sorry.
Hmm?
Jumping the gun, anyway.
Yeah.
And I think they have to have the responsibility of updating the address with us.
Can I just ask a question? 'Cause
Yeah.
I saw on the bill that there's 2 addresses.
Yeah.
44 Mechanic and 47 Pleasant, and so I just didn't know.
And there's a post office.
Well, that's,
Oh, that's our post,
that's
okay.
ours, but yeah, the 2 on the bill, there's 2 on the bill. And so I guess my question is, which one did we send it to?
And are they up?
No, the 4 Mechanic is the name of their LLC.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So we would have mailed to 47 Pleasant Street.
So the bill, it looks like, went to 47 Pleasant, and that's the address that she put on the abatement request.
Now, this bill was printed after they
yeah.
paid, so it could have been updated at a time, and the old address could not be anywhere there.
Still think that it's incumbent on the taxpayer to notify the town. We can't, not the town, and I think we can expect town employees to go looking after new addresses when you move.
there's 2 penalties here, so there's 2 bills that she's. Right, there's a February penalty and a April penalty that she incurred.
So there's also, I believe, the
Interest.
same thing happened last year. They did not pay the bill on time as well, so I don't know if that's a hangover from the year before or not.
Went on for more than a year.
I know the same issue occurred last year as well. For the same person.
And they still didn't get their mailing
Yeah.
address right.
Apparently.
So no, they were delinquent 2 years. So she just barely paid for both years.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a long time. Your motion,
Move we deny request.
your a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The next one is a repair.
Yep, they want to replace their old sewer line with a new one.
Do you know if it's going in the exact same place?
I don't have the information. My assumption is it is, but we can,
Yeah, if it's not, we might need to go to the state as well.
yeah, and then we'll have to also probably go through our boards as well for a permit too. Yeah.
So, but if it's just pulling it out, putting it right back in, then it's.
Yeah.
No, they don't need to.
That'll make sense because I know he had to clean it.
It says here replace old sewer line with new, so
Yeah.
you would assume
It'd be in the same place.
it's in the same.
yeah.
Your motion to approve that?
I move we approve.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. And then approve the minutes.
Now, my only correction is at the end, when we were talking about the approving of the previous minutes. I know I'm a multitasker, but I somehow moved and seconded.
Okay. Good job.
We just need.
Want to try that again?
If we could.
I
see
can fix
someone-
that. I can look at who actually did it.
Okay,
Okay, so motion to approve the minutes.
I move we approve with that correction.
All those in favor?
Need
Aye.
a second other
Oh.
than me.
Greg, you have to second.
I'll second it.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'm gonna abstain because I wasn't.
Yes, thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
We second or we vote?
Just move it. I
Yeah.
moved everything.
Yeah. Just
I'll
say-
make a motion to adjourn. the meeting.
Second,
I'll second it.
all those in favor? Good night.
I just want to, hours is really long.